Call.
Everybody, what's good? What's going on? JB here, back with another CyberInsight live stream. Happy Friday to everybody. TryHackMe dropped a new room this week. It's covering Wireshark and traffic analysis. You know, it's one of my favorite tools to talk about, whether we're looking at it from a cybersecurity perspective or from the background that a lot of us come from in IT, ops, and engineering. It's a tool we all use, and if you don't use it, you probably are going to use it at some point, so it's definitely worth finding out a little bit more about it. This particular room that they dropped is actually focused on using it for traffic analysis, not from the perspective of troubleshooting, but from the perspective of identifying different types of malicious traffic within an environment. So I think it's pretty cool. Figured we'd jump in, check that out, and just kind of go from there. So I'm going to move over to the other browser. As always, appreciate you dropping in. Make sure you smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, all that other good stuff, and we are going to get into it. So here we go. This is the room. I'm going to put the link for this in the video description so you can go and obviously hit this up. As you can see, it actually covers quite a bit of stuff, and we don't necessarily have the time to do all of that today. So what we're going to do is cover the NMAP scans and ARP poisoning today. And if enough people like it and find this useful, then we can dig into some of the other tasks in some other live streams. But just to kind of cover everything that the room does dive into: NMAP scans, ARP poisoning, identifying DHCP, NetBIOS, and Kerberos, looking for tunneling traffic within DNS and ICMP. That one should actually be pretty good. Then clear text protocol analysis of FTP and HTTP, probably looking to see if there's different types of commands or passwords that might be being passed in that. Encrypted protocol analysis, decrypting HTTPS. So probably going to be messing with some keys and stuff like that in that task, which would be pretty cool. And then they have some other bonus stuff that we'll do. So for this room, you just have to spin up this one machine, get that going. There's no attack box that we need to use here, and we can kind of just hop into this. So in this room, we're going to cover techniques and key points of traffic analysis with Wireshark and how to detect suspicious activities. They've done a few other Wireshark rooms before. If you haven't had the chance to go check those out, I definitely say that you should do that. I think I even have some walkthroughs on their stuff. If you go to the different playlists, I have TryHackMe room walkthroughs. And I think my friend Kiki and I did a walkthrough on this a while back. Yeah, Wireshark 101. It's 90 minutes of fun there. That's a good walkthrough to check out. And then I also think in some of my other Network Plus lab videos, we did some protocol analysis with Wireshark. Kind of went into the basics of how to use that. So definitely go check those out if you're unfamiliar with what Wireshark is and how to do some basic searches there. So pretty much what they're saying is that those other rooms cover the basics. And then from a security analyst perspective, it's vital to stop and understand pieces of information spread in packets by applying the analyst's knowledge and tool functionality. This room covers investigating packet level details by synthesizing the analyst knowledge and Wireshark functionality for detecting anomalies and odd situations for a given case. And as I mentioned, you just have the room that you need to spin up there. It's also worth noting how you actually get data into Wireshark. So we could either run this on a machine and have it just listen to the data that's going over different interfaces. That's normally from an IT operational perspective what we would use for troubleshooting. The other thing you can do is if you're able to get packet captures of live traffic from other devices within your environment, you can then take those PCAP files and have Wireshark read those, and you can do analysis that way. So let's jump into NMAP scan. So NMAP is an industry standard tool for mapping networks. Again, we've covered NMAP in quite a few other rooms. If you aren't familiar with that, then definitely go check those out. Identifying live hosts and discovering different services on a network. As it's one of the most used network scanning tools, a security analyst should identify the network patterns created with it. You'll see it's one of the most widely used tools that's installed on Kali and things like that a lot of pen testers use. This section will cover identifying the most common types of NMAP scans. So TCP Connect scans, SYN scans, and UDP scans. It's essential to know how NMAP scans work to spot this type of activity within our environment. However, it is impossible to understand the scan details without using the correct filters. And so filters are kind of these little commands that we can use within Wireshark to drill down and look for specific types of data within the full stream of traffic that we have. Below are base filters to probe NMAP scan behaviors on the network. So we could do some TCP flags, and while we're covering UDP, they say UDP here as well, but we'll get into the UDP stuff a little bit later. So you could just look for TCP traffic or UDP traffic. If we want to see only a SYN flag in TCP, then it's TCP period flags equals 2. See that the equals is what we are going to be using a lot when we're tying back a value to a particular type of filter that we're doing. If we want to see that the SYN flag is set, then we can see that there with this value, looking for only ACK flags, SYN and ACK flags together in the traffic, a reset flag, only reset and ACK flags, and only FIN flags. So we see all this stuff. We're going to dig into specific scenarios where each of these matters, but really the main takeaway here is that there's different Wireshark filters that we want to use when we're looking for specific types of TCP flags. And here we're going to look at the different types of scans that NMAP might do and where we would tie back understanding different types of flags with the types of scans that we would be expecting to see. So TCP Connect scan, just from a high level, relies on a 3-way handshake. It's usually conducted with this NMAP command. It's used by non-privileged users. It's the only option for non-root users, and usually has a window size larger than 1024 bytes, as the request expects some data due to the nature of the protocol. So we would expect to see a SYN ACK being sent back. So this is from the scanner sending a SYN, and then the destination device that's being scanned sending back a SYN ACK, and then the scanner sending back an ACK. And this would be if there was an open TCP port. Then this again is another example of an open TCP port. So SYN ACK, ACK, and then if they were going to close that session out, then a reset and ACK. And if the port actually isn't open, the sender would send or the scanner would send a SYN, and then the device would send back a reset and an ACK. And that way you would know that if you were trying to scan, let's say, port 80 and port 80 wasn't open, then this would be what you would be expecting to see back. The images below cover the 3-way handshake process of open and closed TCP ports. These particular PCAP samples are actually available on the particular lab box that we have here. So if we go under exercise PCAPs, and for instance, we go under NMAP, everything that we're looking at there actually does have a PCAP that we could open and look in Wireshark. I'm not necessarily going to do that because that will take a little bit more time, especially because we're already looking at the specifics of the output here. But if you want to spend a little bit more time digging into the specifics, you can definitely do that. So open TCP port. Here we see the source. This is a scanner device sending a SYN, and then the receiving device sending back a SYN ACK, and then the scanner sending an ACK, and then a reset and acknowledgement. Here, because of the fact that the port is closed, the scanner will be sending a SYN, and then this next packet that came in from the device that's being scanned, since the port is closed, it would just send a reset and an ACK. So they're saying the above image provides patterns in isolated traffic. How it's not always easy to spot the given patterns in a big capture file. So if we have a whole bunch of different traffic that we have received and we're trying to look through that, it's not always going to stand out quite like this. So as a security analyst, we need to be able to apply some types of filters to be able to look for the initial anomaly patterns, and then it'll be easier to focus on specific traffic at that point. So the given filter for TCP connect scan patterns in a capture file. So this would be TCP flags SYN equals 1, and the ACK being 0, and then the TCP window size greater than 1024. If you remember, they're talking about that's what we would be expecting to see in the TCP connect scans. And so pretty much what that's doing is just capturing the traffic that shows that there's a SYN flag being sent with a window size of 1024. So another type of scan that we'd be looking at is SYN scans. And this doesn't rely on a three-way handshake. So you're not going to get that necessarily SYN, SYNAC, the additional ACK, and then the reset ACK. It's more so going to be a SYN, you get the SYNAC back, and then just a reset right away from the scanning device. And here's a command that we normally use in NMAP. This is used by privileged users. Since it's not expecting to actually get any traffic back, then the size is going to be less than 1024. Here's kind of what we see when it's an open port versus closed. Again, this is kind of similar to what we'd see at a closed port when doing the connected scans. And again, this is kind of just showing the same thing. So you see the SYN being sent, the SYNAC being received, and then sending a reset. If we wanted to look for that type of scan patterns, again, we'd be using this filter. And really the main difference here is that the window size is less than 1024. Again, if you see this type of traffic, it doesn't necessarily mean that there's a scan going on. You want to see that there is also a lot of these different packets coming from one source going to another source and seeing, a whole bunch of different ports being hit. But if you were to do that and run that, then you would see exactly that. You would see the source IP address going to a destination IP address, and you just see all of these different ports here being hit on the scan. Okay, now we get to UDP scans. Doesn't require a handshake process. No prompt for open ports. ICMP error is what we're going to see for closed ports. I will say that this also really depends. This can get thrown off a little bit, and why UDP scans might not necessarily be overly reliable is if you have some type of filtering device in place that might be handling traffic a little bit differently depending it's a firewall and you have some type of IDP or other things going on there that might be dropping packets, or you're blocking ICMP on the network, you might not end up getting the ICMP type 3 code 3 message back. So it might look like all UDP ports are open when actually you're blocking ICMP traffic somewhere. So in this case, we're looking at this device here, 60.70, scanning UDP. We see that is scanning port 69 for DHCP. And we get a destination unreachable coming back with that. So meaning 69 is closed. We don't see the same on 68, so we can infer that port 68 might be open. The above image shows that the closed port belongs or returns an ICMP error packet. No further information provided about the error at first glance, but we can actually dig down into the information provided within Wireshark, deeper down into the packet, and we can see that once we open up the ICMP section in the packet details pane, we'll see the encapsulated data and the original request. So if we dig down into this, we actually can see within here, we get down to the UDP portion. And then within that, we can see the this is the image I'm looking for. We can see within ICMP, we can dig down in here. We can see within that, it refers back to a UDP and the source port and destination port. So this would be the encapsulated data. And this is the filter that we would want to do if we wanted to see packets that or ports that were closed in that scan. So detecting suspicious activities in chunk files is easy, great way to learn how to focus on the details. Now we're going to do some exercises covering this. So let's hop into the lab machine here, and we'll open up Wireshark and open up this particular PCAP file, exercise.pcapng. Let's see. So get rid of this. We'll open up Wireshark. Now, something else that I will recommend here, I've done it in some of my other videos. It's always good to have a Wireshark cheat sheet. This is one that I like quite a bit. I'll put a link for this in the video description. But pretty much if you just go on Google and search for Wireshark cheat sheets, you should be able to find something that will help you out. So let's accidentally open that twice. Let's move this over. And we're just going to go File. We're going to go Open. And we're going to go Computer. Let's go Ubuntu. Desktop, exercise PCAPs. We were looking at NMAP and exercise. So you see when we do that, we have all of this data here. Let's see if we can even make that a little bit bigger for you. There we go. So they have them in sequential order. You have timestamps, source, destination IP address, protocol, length, and then info. And then when we click on any of these, we can then see additional information down here. So we have like the layer 2 information here, the layer 3 stuff dealing with IP. And you can actually click down into these and see different stuff within the packet headers. And then down here, we get to TCP, and we can click down into this and see even more information. You'll also notice that a lot of this data is raw as hex, and you can actually take this and decode the hex back to ASCII if you want to. There's also certain ways to do that here within Wireshark. So just recognize that when we're clicking on things and looking at things kind of in this packet header, when we move and look at different things, you'll see that it's highlighting different parts of the hex because that's what it's corresponding to. So the first question that we had here is, what is the total number of TCP connect scans? So if you remember that we actually had a filter we could use here. So remember, TCP connect scans, we're expecting the window size to be larger than 1024 bytes. So we can go ahead and do this. We're just going to copy this over. And we see that we have 6,544 packets displayed. You can kind of see that it looks like 60.7 is the one doing the scanning here, sending all these SYNs. So we can go ahead, move this over, copy this. And when we do that, it cuts it down to 1,000 packets. You can kind of see that it's 60.7 and it's scanning the same IP address, and you can kind of see it's just going down through all these different port numbers. So we'll go with 1,000. And then we can go, what scan type is used to scan the TCP port 80? So if we actually want to see that, we could look for port 80 traffic. We could go TCP dest port equals 80. Okay, and then we can see, so it's sending a SYN. It's sending an ACK, a reset ACK, SYN, reset. So this is kind of the way that this is playing out. So if we go back and kind of look at the different types of scans and what they were doing here, we see that it's not a SYN scan because it actually is kind of doing that three-way handshake. Sending a SYN, an ACK, and then a reset ACK. SYN, ACK, reset ACK. So that would be a TCP connect scan versus a SYN scan. How many UDP close messages are there? So if remember, for the UDP close messages, we were looking at the ICMP type being 3 with an ICMP code of 3. All right, so closed port, ICMP type 3, code 3 message being sent back. So we can just take this filter here. Get rid of that. Let's see. Oh, I hate it when I do that. Let's try that again. There we go. And we can see here that based off of that, we're seeing 1083. Now remember, we can dig down into this. See if we can move this so you can see a little bit better. We can dig down into this to see the particular ports that were being scanned. If we click into ICMP and down, and we can see the UDP protocol here, source and destination. See, this one was 31625. This one here is 64481, 49201, 8900. You can see the particular destination ports. Let's see. Yep. Cool. Okay. Let's see. So the question was, how many messages are there? 1083. And then which UDP port in the 55 to 70 port range is open? Okay, so we're going to do a filter here to look for ports within this range. So let's see if we can kind of figure out, kind of already showed you how to do for a particular TCP port. So, but we're doing UDP, so let's go UDP destination port. And we want something that's greater, it was 55 through 70. So let's go greater than 54 and UDP dest port less than 71. So that should get us 55 through 70. Let's move this down and we can. Okay, so we got 12 packets that ended up hitting this. So we got 67, 69, and 68. Based off of this, it looks like 67, and then probably came back with this. And we see the ICMP message for 67. So 67 is not open. It's probably going to be the same thing for 69. Yep. And then 68 has all these without getting any ICMP type 3, message 3 packets back. So that would mean that 68 is open. Cool. All right. Now we're going to move on to ARP poisoning and man-in-the-middle attacks. If anybody has any questions, you go ahead and throw those in the chat. If not, we can just press on. So let's talk a little bit about ARP, or the Address Resolution Protocol. So it's a technology responsible for allowing devices to identify themselves on a network. ARP poisoning, also known as ARP spoofing or man-in-the-middle attack, is a type of attack that involves network jamming and manipulating by sending malicious ARP packets to the default gateway. The ultimate aim is to manipulate the IP to MAC address table and sniff the traffic of the target host. So there's a variety of tools available to conduct ARP attacks. However, the mindset of the attack is static. So it's easy to detect such an attack by knowing the ARP protocol workflow and Wireshark skills. So ARP analysis in a nutshell. So it has to work on a local network. So that means like within the same subnet. Enables communication between MAC addresses. It's not a secure protocol. It's not a routable protocol. So that means like it's not encrypted, and it's not something that is actually routed out between networks. It doesn't have an authentication function. So that is kind of why it's this, or has the ability to be compromised in some ways, because the devices will just ask a question, and whatever responds back with the answer has the potential of getting loaded into that IP to MAC address table. Common patterns are request and response, announcements, and gratuitous packets. So before investigating the traffic, let's review some legitimate and suspicious ARP packets. Legitimate requests are similar to the shown picture: a broadcast request that asks if any of the available hosts uses an IP address, and a reply from the host that uses the particular IP address. So if we want to just search for ARP traffic, we could just use ARP. And then there's a few different Wireshark filters that are worth noting. So ARP requests, this is going to be a device sending out, in essence, a broadcast message being, who has this particular IP address? If you do know what it is, tell this other IP address, which is normally itself. ARP responses, so this would be ARP opcode 2 is going to be, hey, this particular IP address is at this MAC address. Normally that would be the device itself that has that IP address responding back and providing its MAC address. ARP scanning, so this is going to be this. It's pretty much doing like a broadcast. So that's going to be the destination hardware MAC address is just all zeros. Possible ARP poisoning detection. So that would be, this is kind of nice that Wireshark actually does this for you. So if you search on this, it's going to tell you duplicate addresses detected, or duplicate address frames, and then possible ARP flooding from detection. And that's going to be ARP and a ARP request code and ARP source hardware MAC address equals a particular MAC address. So we're actually going to dig into these in these pictures, and it probably will make a little bit more sense. So here we have just a regular ARP request. This particular source is asking, hey, where is 1.1? If you know where it is, tell 1.25. And it's sending this out as a broadcast to all MAC addresses on that particular subnet. This particular device responds back hey, 192.168.1.1 is at this MAC address, which is itself. Let's see, that's what they're saying here. This is the ARP reply. A suspicious situation means having two different ARP responses, which would be a conflict for a particular IP address. In this case, Wireshark Expert Info tab warns the analyst. However, it only shows the second occurrence of the duplicate value to highlight the conflict. So therefore, if you do see that, you're going to have to dig a little bit further into the actual PCAP to also see what the initial response was as well. So you can see the two devices that have or saying they have the same IP address. Again, this doesn't necessarily mean that someone is attacking your network or anything like that. Sometimes there's misconfigurations that happen in an environment. So if you have a duplicate IP that gets assigned to things, sometimes you get some funky stuff with DHCP where something is supposed to release an IP and it doesn't, and then somehow another box ends up coming online with that. There are definitely certain scenarios where it's not necessarily malicious, but it should be something that should cause you some concern. Interesting to note, you also might be able to see certain error messages like this in different types of networking devices. Sometimes Cisco will say when there's duplicate addresses within an environment. So again, something else to be aware of when you're looking at logs. So here we can see the requests go out, who has this, tell this particular IP address, and then we see from two different MAC addresses coming back saying, hey, I'm 192.168.1.1. And just looking at that, normally a lot of people, when they configure networks, will use the .1 as their gateway. So in this case, it looks like we might have a malicious device that is wanting to pretend to be the gateway. So that way, this host will send all of its traffic that's going to be going to a default route to that device. And in essence, that would be how it would become the man in the middle. So here, knowing the network architecture and inspecting your traffic for a specific time frame can help detect the anomaly. As an analyst, you should take notes of your findings before going further. This will help you be organized and make it easier to correlate the further findings. Look at the given picture. There is a conflict. The MAC address ends in B4. It crafted an ARP request with 192.168.1.25 as the address, then claimed to have the 192.168.1. address. Right? So it's saying who has this, and then it ended up actually also claiming that it had it, and it was that address. So some detection notes so far. So possible IP address match, one IP address announced for MAC address. And then possible ARP spoofing attempt, two MAC addresses claimed the same IP address. And as I mentioned, 192.168.1.1 could be a possible gateway address. So you have these two MACs claiming that. And then possible ARP flooding attempt, the MAC address that ends with B54 claims to have a different or new IP address. And we see that it is sending this to this host here. So that necessarily looks like it's trying to be the man in the middle against this particular destination device. Okay, so let's keep inspecting the traffic to spot any other anomalies. Note that this case is split into multiple capture files to make the investigation easier. Again, just like the NMAP PCAP files that we're looking at, all of these different things have their own PCAP files within the folder on the desktop, so you can definitely go and check that out. So we have this device. Looks like it's just broadcasting to everything, asking for these particular IP addresses, and saying to tell 192.168.1.25. So it says a security analyst cannot ignore a flood of ARP requests. This could be malicious activity. Could also be a scan on the environment. So depending on what this is coming from, if this is coming from, a Qualisr or Nessus device, then maybe that would be expected. If it's not, then that could be a little suspicious. There is a new anomaly. The MAC address that ends in B4 crafted multiple ARP requests with the 192.168.1.25 IP address. Let's focus on the source of the anomaly and extend the notes taken. So we've kind of already already looked through this and possible ARP flooding attempt. The MAC address that ends in B4 crafted multiple ARP requests against a range of IP addresses. So it's wanting to know all that within this particular subnet. Up to this point, it's evident that the MAC address that ends with B4 owns this particular IP address, because all the packets up here asking for this are telling it to tell 192.168.1.25. It also claimed to have a possible gateway address as well. Remember, so it said that it was the .1.1. Let's focus on other protocols and spot the reflection of this anomaly in the following sections of the time frame. So we have some HTTP traffic here. This going to 249.3 looks like just HTTP traffic. Looks like a login page. Getting a bunch of stuff here. So just unencrypted web traffic going back and forth. So this all looks good at the IP level, so there's no linked information with previous findings. Let's add the MAC addresses as the column in the packet list to reveal the communication behind the IP addresses. So we have 192.168.1.12. So it's C7A8 going to 44.228.249.3. And destination MAC address of B.4. Now that's interesting because that was the attacker machine. Now you would expect that this destination MAC address would actually be the gateway MAC address, because if you remember, like within a particular network, all the traffic going to the default route is going to have to go to a gateway, and therefore from a layer 2 perspective, all that traffic would have to go to the MAC address of that gateway. But since it's not the gateway and it's actually the MAC address associated with 1.25, then this looks like a man-in-the-middle attack. So to summarize all of this stuff here, IP to MAC matches, 3 IP to MAC address matches. So we have B.4 is 1.25, which is the attacker machine. CDF4 is the actual gateway, and then the machine that the man-in-the-middle attack is happening to is this C7A8, which is this 1.12. The attacker created the noise with ARP packets, this guy, the router gateway, and then the victim. So detecting these bits and pieces of information in a big capture file is challenging. However, in real-life cases, you will not have tailored data ready for investigation. Therefore, you need to have an analyst mindset, knowledge, and tool skills to filter and detect the anomalies. In traffic analysis, there's always alternative solutions available. The solution type and approach depends on the analyst knowledge, skill level, and available data sources. I'd also say the tools that are available as well. Detecting suspicious activities in chunk files is easy and a great way to learn how to focus on the details. Now use the exercise files to put your skills into practice against a single capture file and answer the questions. So let's go take a look at this. This is ARP exercise the PCAP NG. So we're going to go and open this up. And let's go exercise PCAPs. There's ARP. Exercise there. We'll get rid of this filter. And here we go. So we got 2,866 different packets here. Also interesting, you can kind of see this. So we were looking at that before, broadcast being all Fs. Here they're kind of just automatically telling us a broadcast. Also interesting, you see that it has a signature for different MAC addresses, depending on the vendor, have a certain set of bytes in the MAC address. And if you know what those are, then you can actually tell the vendor associated with that particular type of interface. In this case, they're just already figuring that out and letting you know that it is VMware. Worth noting, though, that you can actually change the MAC address itself. So if you wanted to kind of F with people, you could change it to be a different vendor than what it actually is. Okay, so what are the number of ARP requests crafted by the attacker? So remember, if we wanted to see ARP requests, then it's ARP opcode equals 1. And so we know that 18B4 is the attacker. But as you can see, we do have other things in here besides just that, right? So if we were to answer this and go 295, this shouldn't actually be the real answer. So if we go and we do this, 295 is not correct because we have other ARP request traffic here besides that just from the attacker. So what we can do is we can apply a filter, selected source, and ARP opcode equals 1. Let's see, 284. Let's see if that works for us. Perfect. What is the number of HTTP packets received by the attacker? So let's go TCP let's just search for this right off the bat. Let's see, and this here, if we look at this, we should be able to see that this is actually the attacker's destination MAC address. So let's go destination. I'm going to go destination MAC address. Wait, it was HTTP, right? Not just, yeah, okay. We don't want to just go with TCP. We want to actually go HTTP. Let's see. Let's see if we can do that. Let's go. I'm just looking to see how I can do this within. Okay, we should be able to go this. Let's get the MAC address. So destination MAC address. Applies filter. Selected. Oh, that's not what I wanted. Let's go this. apply filter, selected. Let's go destination and HTTP. Let's see. Let's see if that is it. 90. Okay. So you see what we did there was got the MAC address of the device that's doing the man-in-the-middle attack, and then looked for HTTP traffic from that. Okay. Now, what is the number of sniffed username and password entries? So let's move this a little bit so you can see this a little bit better. Let's see where this traffic is actually going. So let's go into the HTTP headers. So it looks like the URI of this testphp.vulnweb.com/login.php. Let's see if there is. I don't see any. So this is a post going to this website. Let's take a look at this. See if there's any data here. Okay, so this is a HTML form URL encoded. Let's scroll down. Okay, so here we can see it's passing a username and password. So we could search on this URI. Okay. So that leaves us with this many packets, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. But we should make sure that the data that's being posted here is actually username and password data versus just assuming that. So see, like this here, it's posting data, but it's not actually username and passwords that we're collecting. So that one doesn't count. That one doesn't count. That one counts. That one counts. That one counts. That one counts. And that one counts. So out of the 8, 6 of those were able to get username and passwords. Okay. What is the password of client 986? Let's just see. Client 986 is right here. Client not here, bang. Okay, and then what is a command provided by client 354? Let's see. I don't think that we saw a client 354 here. No, so we would have to look elsewhere to see if we can find that. Where else would we be able to see if we can apply a filter? Let's see. Login, login, login. see what might be another way to be able to see. Well, this might be comment, post, client 354. So we could have maybe searched on a form item if we knew kind of the format of this. Also could have searched on a post as well. So this particular URL with a post message, but we ended up finding client 354. Nice work, bang. Let's do that. All right, so that kind of wraps up what we were going to cover today. So we did a little bit with NMAP scans, detecting TCP connected scans, SYN scans, UDP scans, and then some stuff with ARP as far as looking at ARP requests and responses, and then ARP scanning, and then possible ARP poisoning and ARP flooding. So yeah, if you have any questions, throw them in the comments section. If you're interested in doing any of these other tasks in the room, let me know as well. I think that these actually look pretty good, so probably definitely worth doing it. So yeah, appreciate folks dropping in, especially on a Friday. Hope everyone has a good weekend, and yeah, we'll chat soon. All right, bye.